First of all, I've never seen a dog off leash here. I actually rarely see dogs. Only at 6 p.m. 6 p.m., all the dogs are out. I think because,
Interesting.
yeah, people get home from work. I don't know. And that's when they walk their dogs, maybe. A lot of times the dogs pee inside too. So they don't need to go out as often. Also because work hours here are longer. A lot of people work 10 to 12 hours. Have
Wow.
to. So the dogs, they need to be able to pee inside. So we have pee pads.
I'm Olivia.
I'm Laura, and this is Ruffly Speaking, a podcast driven by honest, curious conversations about life with dogs.
Each episode, we explore one story or idea that helps us see our relationships with dogs a little differently.
It's not about perfect training or quick fixes. It's about the real, sometimes messy, always evolving nature of sharing life with dogs.
So, Laura, we just did our episode with Marina. Oh my gosh, I feel like I learned so much and I had so many questions about the whole thing because we were talking about cross-cultural perspectives on dog care and pet care and stuff like that. But what did you think of the episode?
It was the perfect first guest episode. I am so happy that we chose her because just to give you a little rundown about Marina, she is a pet sitter that actually used to work at Curious Nudes for a brief moment of time before she moved back to Japan. She is studying psychology. She has a very rich experience growing up in Japan within a very Brazilian community. And then she also came to Canada, started her own pet sitting business, and then now moved back to Japan. So we were very excited and because we had a chance to talk to her about all the things that she's noticing, the cultural differences in the way people relate to dogs and the role that dogs have in the different communities that she's had a chance to be part of. So I think everyone's going to love this conversation. There's a little bit of everything, exotic animals, dogs, psychology. It's very interesting. And I think it's going to be a very fun one to start our guest season.
I know it actually makes me more excited to want to get guests from other countries and other cultures on the podcast because, man, it's just such a different world. And I think it really offers a really unique perspective for people who are either in North America or in the UK, maybe where it's a little bit more similar in terms of culture and pet care. But to be able to hear her perspective on dog culture in Japan was just super interesting. So I think everyone's going to really enjoy this episode and learn more about what dogs are like in a different culture.
This one's a very fun one. So grab a nice drinky or wash your dishes while you listen to our conversation. And I hope you enjoy. All right. Well, welcome everyone. We have, as we just mentioned, Marina here with us, and we are very, very excited for this because this is our very first episode with a guest that is not me or Olivia because we've been interviewing each other, and this is our first time actually having another human here to tell a new story, and that means a lot, and we are very happy that you decided to be our first. Thank you for the trust.
Of course. How could I not accept it? I feel honored to be the first. And this is so crazy. Like you doing a podcast, an actual podcast, and me being on a podcast episode.
It's going to be on Spotify. It still feels like that we posted that. It's like, whoa, we have an episode on Spotify. So it's very exciting to finally take this step because that was our goal from the get-go, to really get people in and listen to people's stories that we don't know. So yeah, thank you for opening that stage. And yeah, we're ready to hear about your story and everything that you've been doing in Japan because I am very curious about all.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm an open book, like I said before. So
Well, I think the first thing I feel like this is why you came to my mind when Olivia and I were brainstorming ideas of who we want to get, because we wanted to get someone who we can kind of like feel comfortable messing up with and that we kind of like feel safe. And you came to our minds. And also because of your story, I think that you have a very unique experience at growing up in a very multicultural environment in general. So if you can walk us through kind of like that beginning of Marina, and if you can connect that to when growing up was the first time that you started to be curious about animals? Because I know that you have a whole story with animals and wanting to just take care of them all. So yeah, if you can just walk us through that, how everything started.
Well, I'm half Brazilian, half Japanese. My parents were born and raised in Brazil, and then they moved to Japan, and I was born in Japan to a Brazilian family. So I spoke Portuguese my whole life. I went to a Brazilian school. So I pretty much grew up as a Brazilian. And my dad always loved animals. And I think every weekend we would go to the zoo or a pet shop just to check the animals and just to like interact with the animals. And so I grew up being okay with any kind of animals. I would touch anything. I would touch snakes. I would touch beetles. And we've had so many pets as well. In Japan, there are actually a lot of exotic pets in Japan, and it's very easy to access them and to have them. So I had like 2 snakes, 1 tarantula, 1 millipede, bearded dragon. I had bunny. I had
Oh
birds. I
my
had
gosh.
fish. Yeah.
You had all of that in kind of like the same time range? They were all coexisting?
Yeah. At one point, yeah, but it became
Whoa.
too much. Yeah, so we had to find them new homes. But I think we just got a little too excited because we all loved animals so much. But
And you could have them, so you want them all.
yeah. So yeah, I started with exotic animals first, and then dogs were actually my last animals. And yeah, so we got 2 dogs, a border collie and a mini dachshund, dachshund, however you pronounce
It's
it.
such a tricky, I think it's dachshund, but it's so
Dachshund.
confusing. I live all my life saying dash hound because I don't
Yeah,
know, they
right.
look like a dash in my brain. That makes sense.
That's so cute. They
That's
look like a
true.
dash.
So in my head, it's dash hound, of course.
That makes sense. And then, yeah, I was 11 at the time. I didn't know anything about dog training, enrichment. I was just kind of playing with them, right? And so I learned a lot with practice. And I remember with my border collie, I would try to do agility training without even knowing what agility was. So I didn't know dogs had like we had a hula hoop. Hula hoop, is that what it's
Mhm,
called?
mhm, mhm.
And I think I had never seen a dog jumping a hula hoop, but I just thought, okay, maybe you can jump this hula hoop. And I would what's it called? I would try to not trick, but bring the dog to
Lure
jump
him.
lure him, yeah, with the treat. And so I think it was always in me to
Mhm,
try to, yeah, motivate the dog to do something
mhm,
physical that
mhm.
I wanted to.
Okay, well, I'm gonna do like a little pause
Yeah.
because I just want to highlight that when I met you, and it's so funny how I have the same memories, like the same way that I met Olivia, and I remember a lot about her first reel that popped into my phone, and it was her giving a little tour about her experience with a trainer. With you, it was the same thing because I remember on my community group like here in New West, people let us like the people who had like services to post on Sundays. So a lot of people post like dog walking services, dog grooming, pet sitting, and all these things. And then you posted this video doing all this agility stuff in a playground with a doggy. And I was just like, this is so awesome. And then I wanted to reach out to you, but somehow I lost your post and I never found you. But I remember your name. So every now and then I would like look around and see if I could find a post from you. And then finally you posted again and I was just like, hi, let's go have a coffee. And it was
Oh
just so
my
much fun
God.
to see someone because you don't see that often. I think like it's more and more coming up that more people are doing these little games with dogs, but it was so nice to see you doing and offering that service. And it was just like, yeah, like the world needs more of this. I love that.
Yeah, that's true. It's growing. But I think still, like, I think this is something that comes from inside. And even though it's
Mhm.
growing a lot, I feel like a lot of times it's very like the same things or the same ideas that people think that enrichment is just, okay, puzzles and, like, I don't know, external things. I think it's
Mhm.
not coming from within. So I think it's still rare
Mhm.
in a way. And again, I didn't really come from a dog training perspective or interest. I didn't know anything about dog training. And so going back to my story, I moved to Canada at some point, and then I started working at dog daycares. And Honestly, I didn't have any experience with dogs other than having dogs, owning dogs myself. And they hired me, so I started working at a dog daycare, and it's a completely different environment and completely different experience and knowledge as well, because now I'm focusing on dogs in groups, so more group play,
Uh-huh.
more dog behavior inside groups. And yeah, it was very different. It was difficult at first because I didn't know dogs could fight or that easily.
And oh boy, they
And
fight.
oh boy, they fight, and they could potentially kill another dog if they wanted to. But yeah, so I had to learn a lot, and I think I was always learning with practice because no one was
Mhm,
there
mhm.
teaching me, okay, so this behavior, you see this, body language, this means that. I just kind of learned on, as I went.
And it's so funny. I just wanted to say, because we were just talking about that, of like how when I started working at a doggy daycare, my learning really had to come from me. And it was just like driving me to learn, because there's really not that expectation for you to, like, I don't know, professionalize within. It's just kind of like, yeah, no, you come in, you do the job, and then you go home, and it's kind of like a very casual thing. And I think it's really coming from us, the ones who are just like, no, like, tell me more, or I want to know more about how to control this situation and how to feel better prepared. And but yeah, I definitely feel like it comes from inside, to want to really get better at handling this group of dogs, because just like you said, it's so different when you have a group, a pack, like even like their mentality and everything gets affected very differently than when you work one with a dog.
Yeah. Sometimes I would pet sit dogs from the daycare at their house. They are completely different at the daycare
Mhm,
and
mhm,
inside the
mhm.
house. At the daycare, they might bark a lot, they might whine a lot, they might be stressed. And at home, they're like the calmest dog ever. So sometimes when I would talk to the owners, oh, we're having this issue with the dog, that issue with the dog, and they would be like, no, my dog has never done that to me. At home, he's never barked, he's never whined. Like, of course, it's different environments. Yeah, completely different people too, taking care of the dog and completely different dogs around the dog, right?
Mhm. And I think this
Um,
is something we were talking about, Olivia, of like how much the context really influences
Mhm.
the behavior in
Totally.
dogs. I don't remember what we were mentioning, but I know that we were talking about that.
mhm.
Totally. I mean, it's such a I mean, dogs have a hard time generalizing and in general. So when you put them in a different context with different people, it just completely changes the whole game for them, and they just become different dogs. And I think we mentioned in one of the episodes that we did previously that I would just wanted to know what like my dog walking clients were like at home, because I'm sure they would be so different outside versus inside, and just the way that they react to things and are around their own humans and things like that. So it makes so much sense. But Marina, I have a question before you get further into your life with dogs, but I'm curious to know, especially for people who have had experiences with working with other animals or even just having other species of animals as pets, what was it that drew you to going into more of the dog route? Because I don't know, you see online there are lizard people, there are snake people, there are bird people, there are dog people, and when you've had such a wide variety of experiences with so many different types of animals at such a young age, I'm just curious to know what was it about dogs that you were like, maybe I want to go that route? Or did you even consider going into reptiles or birds or whatever the heck you had at the time? Because it seems like you had a lot.
Yeah, I think for every species or every types of animals, it's a different kind of interest. For me, I'm still interested in reptiles and I would love to own one or even a
Mhm.
millipede. I used to have a millipede and I would love to have one of them again
No.
when I become more stable. I'm moving so much. But I just love I think for reptiles, millipedes are more exotic animals. I think what I like about it is constructing the terrarium, for example. That's a big fun
Mhm.
part of it. Obviously, I'm not going to play with the animals as much because I don't think they want to play. But
But
I
you
like,
can find
yeah,
the enrichment through the environment, which is pretty cool.
yeah, exactly. You can, yeah, make their own home and get them to interact with the home that you make for them. But for dogs, I think I like to be active. I like to walk, I like to run, I like to, do things with my body. And Honestly, I think dogs are the perfect animals for this. I guess horses could also work, but I don't have access to horses very easily. I would actually love to learn more about horses and caring for horses and
Yeah.
training them because I think it's, yeah, very similar to dogs, but very different too.
I've seen a lot of videos about like all these people that work with dogs and like I mean with horses. Like my goodness, like in my brain it's just dogs with horses and do like a lot of somatic work and yeah, like a lot of people advocating a lot for horses as well because I know that generally and it's so funny how like in society we're so sensitive when it comes to certain animals and then with other animals it's just like it's so normal to see a certain degree of force or things that are of course like not super respectful of the animal so recently I've been kind of like getting a lot of posts about people kind of like just showing how sensitive they are and I think like it's kind of like what went on for dogs maybe like a few decades ago and that we were all also learning that oh it turns out they have needs and they have all these things so I feel like it's just like a natural evolution but yeah, so interesting how you ended up with doggies. And I guess, yeah, they're very accessible, I guess.
Yeah, very accessible, and I just love working with them and being outside with them and moving
Mm.
with them.
And for example, I also had another question of like, how did you decided? Because I have my own story of how I ended up, moving to Canada and starting working at a doggy daycare. But I'm curious to know like what, like from coming here, did you had some experience in Japan working in anything related, or how did you came here and say, so this line of work should be interesting?
I've always loved animals, and I actually my first dream career was to be a biologist. I didn't even know what a psychologist was when I was, I don't know, 8. So I wanted to be a
Uh-huh.
biologist, and then I changed to psychology. Oh, yeah, for those who don't know, I'm studying right now, majoring in psychology. And, yeah, I didn't have any experience working with dogs. I only had experience owning them.
Uh-huh.
But, I think it just sounded more fun. I didn't know what dog daycare was because I don't think we have them in Japan. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, just the thought of having a dog daycare was interesting to me. So I looked more into it, and I saw they were hiring first. Yeah, I decided to apply. I think that was more fun than doing like a restaurant job that I could also apply to, or maybe, yeah, more fun.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is very fun. And to me, it's also funny because for me, it was also like the concept of a doggy daycare. And I remember when I moved to the States, I went there to be an au pair for a year. And one of my tasks was also taking care of the dogs. And I had to take them to daycare. But I remember the first time they told me that, oh, yeah, you take the dogs to daycare. And I was just like, I thought like it was a joke of like, oh, yeah, I don't know, like you take them to, I don't know, like a neighbor or something. But it was like an actual like place. And I remember I would come in and they like anytime I would pick him up, they would be like, oh, do you want to see a video of him today? And I was just like, I'm fine. It's okay. But yeah, back then it's like, who would have known that I was going to end up in that job at some point? But back then it was just like, I didn't even took it seriously, like the whole idea, which is very funny.
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Now you know.
I think it's so
Yeah.
funny because all three of us have we all come from such different backgrounds. Like, we just talked about Marina living in Japan. Laura, you're from Mexico. I was born here in Canada. And so for me, a doggy daycare it was never a really like weird concept. I mean, I guess younger because they weren't as common back then and they're more common now, but it seemed like more of a natural progression where it didn't really have that cultural barrier in terms of like translating the concept of it. And it's funny that both of you came into this being like doggy daycare, like
Yeah.
why? So I'm wondering, Marina, was there anything specific do you have in mind or anything you can think of that was like more of a cultural shock in terms of how people in Japan see dogs or how you take care of dogs versus in Canada? How, like, what was that shift like for you? Was there anything that was culture shock in your mind about this like pet care mentality?
Yeah, I think the way we treat dogs varies a lot, depending on the country. In Japan, I've seen a lot of dogs who live outside, and that's normal. Like, I think in Canada or even in Brazil nowadays, it could be considered, animal abuse in some cases. But I've seen a lot of dogs, especially older homes, where the dog is chained up outside and that's their life. They have a little house and they usually have a space for them to walk. But yeah, that's the normal. I think that's the security kind of guard dog, right? Guard dog mentality.
So there's
Um,
still that very, I don't know, like a job type of position for dogs, because
yeah.
I was reflecting on that, of how like certain cultures were more close to see dogs as a tool for safety, work, whatever. And I feel like at least here where we're at, we are more into like family and part of, like our household. And it's just, I feel like that belief really starts defining how everything else falls upon like this position that the dog has in our society, I guess.
And I think here there's a spectrum actually. So we have that where the dog is mostly seen as just a guard dog, but we also have those dogs that are usually toy poodles, chihuahuas, very tiny dogs that barely walk because they have their little stroller. And they're
Mhm,
always wearing
mhm,
like amazing dresses, little caps, little, I don't know, little accessories and everything. So we have that too, where the dog is treated, I guess, the complete opposite as a guard dog.
mhm,
And
mhm,
yeah, and in terms of the differences, in Canada, I think dog parks, the idea of bringing the dog to swim, the idea of bringing the dog to daycares, for example, right? That is not as common in Japan. It might be getting more and more common. I've been seeing a lot of people with border collies, for example, and I know they take the border collies to fields, to parks, and let them off leash. But the idea of doing enriched walks and actually, yeah, using the walks as a way to train them, using the walks as a way to make them have fun, it's a completely new idea. At least I haven't seen
mhm.
that here at all.
When you were talking, I had just like so many thoughts of, yeah, just kind of like this, like difference between like just the spectrums that you were mentioning, and how like the totally opposite things. And I wonder that a lot anytime I see those dogs treated like basically like toys, because in Mexico it was very similar. I was telling Olivia, like my dog, like when I was growing up, we would just open the door. She was a street dog, so she came from the streets. We just kind of like took her in, and every now and then she would go outside and kind of like scratch on the door. We would open and she would go. And then a few hours later, she would scratch the door again, and it's just like coming back in.
Wow.
And I was just like, well, like funny enough, like that dog never had any social, like any behavior issues. She was a very stable dog. And it's just like, well, but at the same time, she had those times where maybe it was not the most responsible thing for us to do. But it's still like, it was kind of like she lived her life. And sometimes I wonder, like, which one is getting a more enriched life? I guess that these dogs at least are out there problem solving life on their own. So it's interesting,
Mm,
I guess.
I think the dogs adapt too. So yeah, because even the smaller dogs here, I don't know, I can't say they're miserable. Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it. Maybe they enjoyed their little princess life. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they adapt.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm. And I
yeah.
think like that's the life they know. And I guess that
Yeah.
we are all the same. If you're born to that life, that's what you've lived, you experience. And maybe going outside and being alone would be like the worst nightmare for you, because you are so used to having all of that. So I guess that is a good seg point, like the fact that dogs adapt to their lives.
Mhm.
I'm curious also to know because you'll hear of like dog culture in like Europe, and if you go to a lot of European countries, so there's like a lot of dogs just off leash with their owners on the streets, but they're all, I would say, for the most part, pretty well socialized, and you don't have this idea of like using crates and using leashes when it comes to like dog hair. And there does happen to be a lot of dog owners in a lot of those cities. So I'm wondering, in because you're in Kyoto right now, but you're also making the transition to move to Tokyo, but in what you have experienced, what is like the dog culture there? Like, is it very common for people to have dogs? Do you guys always walk dogs on leashes? Is there like certain ways that people go about things in terms of owning a dog and how people perceive dog ownership?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to talk about because it's very different. So, well, first of all, I've never seen a dog off leash here. I actually rarely see dogs. Only at 6 p.m. 6 p.m., all the dogs are out. I think because,
Interesting.
yeah, people get home from work. I don't know. And that's when they walk their dogs, maybe. A lot of times the dogs pee inside too. So they don't need to go out as often. Also because work hours here are longer. A lot of people work 10 to 12 hours if they have
Wow.
to. Yeah, so the dogs, they need to be able to pee inside. So we have pee pads.
Mhm.
That was the same for my dogs too. So dog walking, yeah, I don't see that many. I do see some, but never off leash. Maybe if I go to fields, bigger parks, maybe. But even then, like I haven't seen any. But in Kyoto, that's in Kyoto. I don't know if in Tokyo it's different. We'll see when I
Mhm.
move. Um,
Mhm.
Another thing, I don't know if you guys, well, probably not. I don't know if you've seen the signs that we have here for picking up the dog poop. We have signs everywhere, but we have to put a paper like under the poop. So we have to catch the poop before it falls.
Interesting.
So it doesn't stain. So you never step on poop here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
Even
there's signs here and people seem to ignore them. So the fact that they actually go the length of putting the thing underneath the poop, I am very impressed by Japan culture at that.
yeah, and I was pet sitting, right? I have one client here in Kyoto that I pet sit every month. I'm actually seeing Kiki, the dog, in tomorrow. Tomorrow, yeah.
Yay! One more day and we would have seen Kiki with you.
Yeah, she's so funny. But yeah, so they they were telling me like how things work and how I walk her, how I should walk her, and the bag that I should bring. So we need to have a little bottle with water so that when she
Mhm.
pees, we have to spray water so it doesn't stain or it doesn't, get
me and
yucky for
Laura are just
people.
sitting here like, what a strange
For
world.
me
But I
too.
mean,
Wow.
Uh, but I mean, this is what this is the stuff that I'm so glad we started this podcast for, because sometimes you're just so in your own bubble and you're doing your own thing and you think this is the norm and this is everybody's doing this thing about dog care or whatever. And then we just happen to talk about what are dogs like in a different country. And it's just a completely different world. But it's totally normal for people in Kyoto to be doing these things. But to us, it'd be like, what are you talking about? You have to wash your pee away.
To carry so much water with me. I just,
Yeah.
especially with like a doggy or something that just marks every second. Just like,
Oh,
my
yeah, that's
goodness.
so true. Oh my God. And the poop
That is
too, like so
so
many paper.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
I mean,
That's
just the
so
skill of
interesting.
trying to get it before it falls out is like that should be commendable, because I'm like, who's that fast to go underneath a dog like that? But that's so fascinating. And like even just using the pee pads indoors is totally normal. Whereas like here, it's so like poo poo if you use a pee pad indoors, because now you're teaching your dog to poo and pee indoors. But there, it's totally normal because I've been to Japan once and it was only for a few days. And one of the biggest culture shocks for me was just looking out the window, and at certain times of day, the streets would be so busy and then so dead. And it just kind of showed how like structured and scheduled some of these lives are of people who were living in Tokyo. Just like they start at a certain time of day, then everybody's gone and doing work, and then they all come out at like 6 p.m. and it's super busy again. But just hearing that and seeing how we have to adapt the lives of the dogs for that schedule, because that is the norm there, right? So I just think it's super fascinating that things that we would kind of normally frown upon here is just so normal there.
And I
Yeah.
think
And
it goes to the point that we were discussing of how when you live on someone else's shoes, you understand why they do the thing. And that if you just hear everyone uses pee pads on like Japan, in your head, it's just like, oh, that's so stupid. But yeah, like turns out like it goes way back to the fact that their working hours are a certain way. And dogs need to be able to do that. And I just think about all the repercussions that that brings in terms of the training needs that people have. Like here, you can hear a lot about like potty training, and that is kind of like the first thing everyone starts on. And it's just like you have your goals, you have these things, and people put a lot of attention on that. And it's just so interesting to see how it was the same thing. Now that I think about it with my own dog, she would always pee and poop in our little inner yard, like in the back of our place. And she would live there, and she had like her little house. She would never sleep with me. And every now and then I would attempt to bring her with me at night. And in the middle of the night, she was just scratching the door, and it's just like, let me out. So it's so funny how for her it was just like the most normal. And she hated when I forced her to stay inside with me, which I thought it was very nice. But she just really adapted to her lifestyle, and that was her normal. But yeah, look at that. Like everything that
Yeah.
you really have to like step away a few feet to really understand why people do what they do.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because in a way, dogs have cultures too, because yeah, they adapt again. Going back to adaptation, they adapt to their culture. And here, yeah, they adapt to the working hours, for example, the owners have. And in Japan, there's so many unwritten rules. So I think that goes back to the structure that you were talking about. Like at 6 p.m., everyone is out. I guess that's the unwritten rule. You have to take your dog out at 6 p.m. And interestingly enough, I have to take Kiki out at 6 p.m. So yeah,
You're one of
I think
those.
I'm one of those people at 6 p.m. walking the dog. But yeah, it's
Wow.
very interesting how Japan works.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is
Okay.
crazy.
I have so many questions for you.
We
Okay,
just open a can of
I
worms.
know. I'm just like, man, we could sit here forever. But like, I guess just because we have all been very experienced with like reactivity and everything so far since you've been there and been back in Japan, have you noticed a lot of dogs with reactivity? Is that a huge thing there or no?
No, I was actually hanging out with my friend one time, and we were talking about dogs. We were looking at the dogs around, and she noticed that a lot of dogs are not reactive. Like, I think she's never seen a reactive dog in Japan. And that's when I started noticing too. That's true. And I started to try to pay more attention to the dogs I see on the streets, which are not very often, mostly 6 p.m. And then yeah, I try to see if there are any reactivity at all towards people, towards other dogs, movements. Nothing. The dogs are very chill here. But and at the same time, I don't see many socialization. I don't see a
So
lot of
kind of like the dog
socializing.
parks and all of
Yeah,
kind of like those mingling, grouping things.
I don't see dog parks. I don't see dogs off leash running around together.
Doggy daycares, you said that it's also not a huge thing.
Yeah, I think it doesn't exist in Japan. I haven't seen any. There are dog hotels.
I mean, boarding, I feel like it's a very different, but it
Yeah.
was very funny to me how when I started working in the daycare, sometimes people would like come in and leave the dog, but they didn't work. They would take the dog and it was just like, oh yeah, no, she needs to socialize. And she would go in just because she had to socialize. And this dog, particularly the one I have in my mind, she hated daycare. Like she would sleep the whole day. And then she would start snapping at other dogs, kind of like if they came close to her bed. She really loved her bed, and it was just like clearly she's not loving it here. She doesn't come excited, but like in the heads of the parents, they were doing the best, which was giving her a chance to socialize. So it's so funny how like really those things maybe just kind of like in our heads that our dogs have that need, or like some dogs I've seen that they're so social, but I think like a lot of dogs aren't naturally like wanting to just mingle with every dog. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think every dog is so different, and we can't just grab one thing and give it to all the dogs. I think the idea of having a daycare could work, but it could also be a problem. I mean, having worked at
Hmm.
daycares, you too, right, Laura? We've seen like some dogs are just not meant for daycare. But some dogs really do learn a lot. Some dogs really do a
Hmm.
lot, really progress a lot and improve from daycares. But then, yeah, it really depends on the dog.
Yeah, and I think like the daycare too. It's like such a difference.
Yeah.
We're possibly gonna have an episode with a girl that I met, and she has this idea, like she kind of like combined off leash walks with daycare, and she has kind of like the best of both worlds because she goes into an acreage and it's just 6 dogs, so it's kind of like a small group, the same group every week, and then she has them off leash in a fence area, so they're like like contains in like the bigger thing. And yeah, like I just love how she kind of like transfer and took like the best parts of like, yeah, socializing, yeah, this, but like making it very safe. So I think like more people are starting now to come up with these hybrid situations, and I do see a bit of a rise with people focusing a lot on satisfying the needs, at least, of course, I'm talking about the marketing here, rather than just, like the money grab that I feel like some places, like again, as Olivia and I were talking, there's so much money to be made out of dogs, at least here in Canada. It's like a huge market. So you do have the risk of people who just wanna, like hoard dogs and have them in like a small place, and they just make as much money as they can because dogs cannot talk. But I feel like nowadays, I feel it's moving more towards that true need satisfaction, which I don't know if it's just coming because that's what I focus a lot on and that's what the algorithm sends my way. But so far, I've seen that tiny nudge to that side.
I've been seeing a lot of that too. And one of the dogs that I pet sat in Canada before, she is quite reactive to people and other dogs, but apparently she started doing this kind of the same hybrid daycare walking thing every week, and she's been fine. She's been having the time of her life. She's been socializing really well. And I remember the daycare I went to, she would get overwhelmed very easily. But the setting is completely different. It's a closed space, smaller, and yeah, she just wants to run. She just wants to be able to,
Mhm,
yeah, smell the ground and like dig and do dog
mhm,
stuff.
mhm.
And she couldn't do
Yeah.
any of that in an actual daycare.
Mm. And now I'm curious to know about how do you see that part on, because you mentioned, like the dogs, they are, at least you haven't seen that, like that reactivity as prevalent in there. So I wonder, like, how is like the day to day as far as you've been able to see of dogs? And I just wonder, like, so there's one side of like maybe not that huge socialization focus on that, but I don't know if in terms of like satisfying their needs, do you see anything that could be also maybe adding to this chiller dogs in Japan?
Mm, like what could possibly be making them not reactive?
I don't know if they are like, I don't know, very close to nature, or they have, I don't know, like maybe bigger spaces to exercise. I feel like they often say a lot of, because I do wonder, we live in such a packed society in here, at least here in US, it's huge. We have like so many like condos that are pet friendly. And in a lot of these places, you just have, every elevator opens and there's a dog on the other side, and kind of like how that affects the experience of dogs. And I don't know if like that, I don't know if they have more maybe like houses that the dogs don't have to be meeting each other all the time. I just wonder if there's anything like that you feel could be a factor.
We definitely don't have as many apartments, especially not apartments with dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So like lifts, elevators, I think that's very rare. Yeah, for apartments with dogs. So I think you wouldn't have that issue here. But with houses, yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe with the dogs who live outside, they are used to seeing people all the time. They're used to seeing dogs pass by all the time. For dogs that live inside, I think enrichment is not something people think about very often.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see a lot of, yeah, enrichment even inside the house to
Mm-hmm.
get them busy. Maybe the types of dogs too that they own a lot of Shiba Inus. And Shibas,
Mm-hmm.
from my experience, I've never seen in a reactive Shiba. I think. But I worked at a
They're
daycare,
feisty.
so they're feisty. They're
I had a
feisty.
few feisty ones.
They're feisty and they do what they want. They are like cats, the cats in the dog world.
Uh-huh.
But reactivity itself, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, a lot of Shibas and a lot of older dogs too. Maybe that's why. So they're, yeah, naturally more slow. But I don't know. I think Japan itself, like I said, there are so many unwritten rules. And one of the biggest things in Japan is being polite. I think everyone is just striving every time to be polite. You enter a building, you want to be polite. And I think in a
Uh-huh.
way they transfer that to dogs. Not in the manners way, but I don't know, behavior way. Maybe
Uh-huh.
when they have a puppy and they grow up like with the puppy, I think they unconsciously get the dog to be polite,
Uh-huh.
but I'm not
Uh-huh.
sure like how exactly that works. I would have to interview people here who have dogs.
We can open an investigation.
We'll do a follow-up episode with Marina showing her case study of all dogs in Japan.
Peer reviewed.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'll have to say if in Tokyo it's the same.
You'll at least have
Might
that
be different.
experience of the contrast.
Mhm.
Mhm. I did want to circle back to something you guys had said a bit earlier about how, like Laura, you were saying here in Canada, that it's becoming more and more prevalent that people are placing like value and prioritizing their dogs, like lives when they're outside of work and things like that. Marina, with what you've said so far, it sounds like dogs are okay to be home alone for extended periods of time because they have access to pee pads and things like that, and people are out for longer. So, especially from your perspective as a pet care professional there, how how is the role of like a pet sitter or a pet walker perceived in Japan? Because in Canada here, like Laura said, there's a lot of money to be made if you are a pet care professional. And let's say you have like a reactive dog, or you have an older dog, or you have a dog that is a part of the family and they want to be cared for just like a part of the family. But in Japan, it seems like the perception and the culture around dog ownership is a little bit different. So, do you, as a pet care professional, feel as valued there than you do here? Is there like, what is your experience with that?
So I noticed that a lot of pet sitters are friends, friends or family
Mhm.
members that the dog owners have. They usually have someone to care for the dogs, or they take the dogs to dog hotels. And I think that's the norm. I haven't seen a lot of pet sitters. I haven't seen a lot of posts either, even for, foreigners, groups of foreigners in Japan. I haven't seen a lot of advertisement. I think, yeah, just because there's not a lot of demand, because they always have a backup, they always have someone, or they always have the dog hotel. I think, I feel like my job in a way is to show them that pet sitter is not just someone who's going to sleep with the dog and, leave the dog out, leave and do whatever and not do anything with the dogs, just caring for them, like feeding them and taking them for a walk. So I think in a way I have to bring that to here because it's a very new
Mhm.
idea. So yeah, for me, like even telling people that I worked as a dog care, pet care professional in Canada full time, I think they don't understand that concept. Like how, okay, so you just slept with the dog and that was your job, or you just took the dog for a walk and that was it. But yeah, I think they don't even understand the concept of enriched dog walks. I think, yeah, they had never heard that term before.
Do you feel valued as much as like what you do in the like for other people?
Um, yeah, maybe I do feel valued in a way. I won't say I won't say I don't feel valued because with the Kiki, for example, with the dog that I pet sit, the owners are really nice and the owners see what I do. The owners saw my Instagram. And I think that brought them a lot of trust and that
Mhm.
makes them value me as well because I told them I was leaving in December and they were actually kind of hesitant in hiring me because I was going to leave soon. And But they decided to hire me and they decided to have me for every month. Like I've been pet sitting Kiki every month. And I think part of the reason why is because, I'm not just someone who will be with the dog, sitting in the couch and just doing nothing. I think they saw what I do and they value that. But the role as a pet sitter itself, like just the word pet sitter, I think is not as valued.
And I was thinking of that, like how, like this, because you can see it of like different ways, either saying like, oh, like this is not a thing here and I'm not going to do it. But I really love the approach that you are taking, which is like, kind of like you came here, you had this experience. And I feel like something we need to understand is that even though it's not a thing, doesn't mean there's no people there who do appreciate their dogs and maybe they don't know that they're dogs. I was once that human who had a dog and didn't know anything about dog needs, like whatsoever. But now that I'm learning and I'm doing it, it's just like, damn, I wish I would have known. So I feel like there's a lot of room as well if you see it as an opportunity to bring that value and show the difference that it can be and how, yeah, like how deep could be the work that one does with dogs. And I love how you're taking it more as okay, it's my job to really show them that and really kind of like get them to think of pet sitting as something very professional and like the peace of mind and all of these aspects that you gain. So yeah, I really like that you see it more as an opportunity to show value rather than just say
Mhm.
like, oh well, I'll just do something else.
Yeah, especially because of the working hours, for example. So the dogs stay home alone a lot of the time. And I think a lot of people just don't know what the dog could be doing. They're not dog daycares, so they won't just take the dogs to someone. Or even the idea of taking the dog to someone to have the dog do something while they're away is
Mhm,
a new idea for them.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
So I
mhm.
definitely want to try to bring that.
Yeah, I want to see how that happens. Also in Japan and like what your experience is there, because yeah, there could be like very different cultural stuff that you'll run up to like within one country, that different regions and different cities have different values. I can see that even here, at least in New West, I feel like there's such a different vibe that, for example, I don't know if you go to Burnaby and it's like it's within like the lower mainland and you wouldn't think that there would be like different things that each city values, but I cannot imagine how like vast could it be in Japan.
Yeah, I think it's definitely different. Kyoto is a big city. There's a lot of tourists and a lot of people in general, but it feels like a small city because everything is
Mhm,
very traditional. They try to keep everything traditional and it's a lot calmer and a lot more nature. Maybe that's why the dogs are calmer too. Could play a role. I don't
mhm,
know. But in Tokyo, yeah,
mhm,
it's such a huge city. But at the same
mhm,
time, there are, I think, more parks. And the
mhm,
concept of
mhm.
dog parks, I think, are more prevalent in Tokyo. So we'll see.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely need to do a follow-up episode to touch back on all of these things, and we can keep learning about that because it's just like it's so fascinating to me seeing, like just the simplest things, and then you hear that for someone else could be so different. It's always nice to learn that.
Yeah, I'll be taking
Mhm.
notes when I go to Tokyo.
Please
Please
do.
do.
Please report back. Marina,
I
now that
love
you're
that.
kind of like in this transition period of moving to Tokyo and kind of taking your small business with you and everything, what are you kind of hoping for in this like next chapter? Because I know you're still studying and everything and you're super busy. But what are you kind of hoping for in terms of, maybe building your own business? Are you still going to be doing a lot of the pet sitting and like pet care? But what does that look like for you, or what do you hope to see for that when you move to Tokyo?
I'm definitely focusing a lot more on my field. But I want to keep doing the pet sittings and dog walks, and I want to keep growing in that as well. Like I want to learn more about that, and I want to show people new alternatives for caring for dogs. So I'll definitely be doing that in Tokyo. I'm actually thinking about how I'm going to advertise myself because it's also different. Advertisement here is different Facebook, not a lot of people use Facebook.
Mhm.
So in Canada, where Facebook groups were a big hub for advertisements,
Mhm.
here, not so much. So I'm trying to see. I'm still, yeah, thinking about the business aspect of it. But in the, I would say, far future, well, of course, I want to be in the psychology field. But I think I want to go towards research, and that way I can have other professions as well. Because usually researchers
You can do
have
the research
other.
about reactive dogs.
Yeah, I can do dog research, canine research. But I think I also want to work with dogs in the future. Maybe being a dog trainer for service dogs so that I can integrate psychology and dogs. Um, because, yeah, I think I want to be with animals, regardless of what my profession is in psychology, in research. Yeah, I think I need that connection. And again, I like
Animal
moving.
life.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, you don't stay still for too long, so that's gonna
Yeah,
be
no.
exciting.
Yeah, no, I can't just be in a lab and doing like computer stuff. I can't.
Yeah, I love that you're studying psychology too, because me and Laura were talking about this actually this morning while we were filming her episode and recording her episode, is how like we're also really interested in human psychology and human behavior and how so much of that is like correlated between the two species. So I think it's just so funny that that's something you actually went to go pursue and learn more about, and how you could possibly apply that to potentially your future with dogs and what that could look like, so that's super cool.
Yeah, I think my knowledge will definitely be applicable for that as well.
Mhm, mhm. And I feel like if you have that interest, it kind of like just blends very well together with the animals and dogs. And at the end of the day, I feel like psychology, a lot of it's the part of our brains that we really share with animals. And at least for me, the more I learn about human psychology and about dog training and about dog behavior and human behavior, just like there's so many things that intersect, especially when it comes to this big feelings and those emotional reactions that we get. In those parts, I feel like our brain really shares a lot of how we respond to triggers and how we, like I was just telling Olivia how I had like a very tough day the other day, and I could feel the triggers stacking in myself of how it was one thing, and then another thing happened, and another thing happened, and then when that last thing happens, you're just like ah, and you explode, and it's just like that's the same thing with our dogs when like you just had like three dogs coming at you, you were like on edge, and then this last one comes in and then they explode. And I just find it so interesting how sometimes we just don't see that connection and we take our emotions and our things, I don't know, sometimes more seriously than we take the ones for our dogs. So it's
Yeah.
funny that, yeah, like you really connected those two and you're like psychology.
Yeah, I think the similarity is also what connects me to dogs more than other animals. Like you were asking before, why dogs and not reptiles, for example. I think the similarity is also, yeah, what makes me see myself in a way in the dog. And yeah, it's
Mhm.
easier in a way to deal with them and to not deal with them, like deal with them, but to be with
Endure that.
them. Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of their feelings are very understandable because they're very similar.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Oh, that's so cool. Well, actually, I think like this is a good segue because we want to start this thing that for all of our guests, we ask them to think about. And I think like this is going to be the first time we do this. So we always wonder if we were a breed of dog, which dog we would be. So I'm just wondering like I think like we should all just do our guess of what the other one would do, and then next time the
Uh,
the guest can choose. But yeah, I don't know, like what dog do you see yourself as?
so I will guess mine or I'll guess you guys.
I think we can all guess it like our own and
Our
also
own.
someone else. So like you do
Someone else.
yours and then I'll do yours and then we'll focus that way.
I'm very chill, I think. Very, but I would say, yeah, I like to be active. I think if I were a dog, I would be an agility training dog. A dog that would love to do urban agility, for example. Um,
Would you consider a
that's such
border
a hard.
collie?
No, I think I'm not that agile. I think that's too
That
much.
drivey.
Yeah. I don't
Let me
know.
think. What could it be a good one? Because you are kind of like a question mark in my brain now that I think about it.
But I'm also small, right? So maybe
That's what I always go back to. I'm like, if the person is small, they have to be a small dog.
a
Okay, can I tell you
small
what I think?
yeah.
Just off the top of my head, and there's probably no reason for it. Maybe it's just intuition. I don't know. Maybe because I've seen like videos online, but like a really like a terrier that's like really good at agility. So like like a cute like blonde. I don't know why blonde terrier. That's just
Terrier.
like yeah, that's like on skateboards and like parkouring off of things. And like
Oh,
maybe terriers aren't really known for that, but in my head, that's what I see you
parkour.
as.
Would you say like a Jack Russell? Because I kind of would see the
Maybe.
Jack Russell.
Maybe.
Yes.
It's tiny and it's agile, and
Yeah.
is
That's
yeah.
true. And they're a
I
little
feel like Jack
stiff too.
Russell.
But I think they have
They're a
so
little
much
stiff.
personality. Like too much too much personality, I think, for me.
Too much aggression for
Yeah.
you. I
Which
feel like a
one?
border terrier. I love border terriers. I don't know if you've seen that. It's
Border
the one that
terriers.
looks. I think it's the one in. No, that's a Jack Russell. Never mind. I need to show you. But they look like
No,
street dogs.
I just Googled border terrier and I'm like, that's what was in my head when I was thinking of the
Really? Let me
terrier. I'm
see.
like a
Where
blonde,
go-
like this.
Yeah. We're gonna put a picture in the video of a border terrier, so everyone can see what we are thinking of right now. But yeah, I could see the border because they're very soft, like and very gentle. But they are. I feel like you could
That's
be
true.
that one.
Guess, yeah. Okay,
They
I'll
look
go with
so
the border
smart too. They look
terrier.
so wise. And I feel
Yeah,
like
they do.
Marina, even though you're younger than both of us, the first thing I think me and Laura said is like, how is she so mature? Like, how is she so smart for her age? Because like, you just seem so much older than you are because you just
Not
carried
physically.
yourself in this. Yeah, but like you just carried yourself in this way that like was just so mature. And I'm like looking at this border terrier and I'm like, he looks like a smart ass dude, you know?
The beard. I'll take it. I'll take it. Border terrier. That was one of the questions in my job interview for one of the dog daycares I worked at. I don't remember if it was the dog. I don't know why they always ask that question. And I think I always say something
Which one?
different. Which
The
breed
Like,
of
what
breed one?
dog are you?
Yeah. Yeah, what dog breed are you?
They did not ask me that on mine, but we
No?
would wonder, me and my friends from the daycare, we would often, like whenever it was very slow and we were bored, it was just like, which dog would you be? So that was kind of.
We used to like to guess like who that person would be, who that person would be.
Did you ever play the game? I don't know if this is a common thing, but like the closing your eyes and trying to guess the dog based on touch, which it's surprisingly more difficult than you may think. And I also now I think about sometimes the dogs did not want it to be touched. So it's just like, oh my goodness. And we were like blind eyes touching at this dog. And I was
Touching
like,
their
my
face.
goodness. Yeah. So I don't know if you
My
played
goodness.
that, but that was a popular game for us. But for our breed, so like last time we talked about this, I was a little offended at first, but then I made my peace with the decision because Olivia used the exact like same thought process as you of like, you are small, which I want to tell the audience that Olivia and I have a difference in height of like this, but for some reason she always says that I'm tiny. Even
Do
though
we
it's like pretty
actually?
much
I
the
thought you
same.
were so much shorter than me. I need to go back and look at a picture because I feel like you're a lot shorter than me.
We're pretty much the same. But we'll see. We'll
Anyways,
need to take a picture.
the point is, I thought Laura was a very active and very engaged Pomeranian, and she did not love the idea.
It's not my
But
first
I'm like,
guess.
Pomeranian.
But Pomeranians are so cute and they're so like full of energy. And I was saying
That's
that
true.
Laura she's super chatty and she talks like a mile a minute. Poms can be a little bit yappy.
Yeah,
It would be a Jappy dog, that's for sure.
That's true. That makes sense, actually. And they are very
Yeah,
smart.
like yeah, they are smart. I do know my fair share of very smart. I think like there is a bad rep on toy dogs that everyone thinks that they're stupid, but it's because people treat them like toys. But they're very
Yeah.
feisty, and that's the part that I love about the Poms, that they're feistier than you would expect because you think that they're cute and then they bite you. So it's just like I feel like that's me. I'm
And they have a
owning
lot
the
of
Pom.
feelings. Yeah.
They have.
Yeah, and you have a lot of feelings, and I just think it's perfect.
Olivia is a dog with little feelings because she doesn't have little feelings. But I thought that she would be a really great German short hair pointer.
I loved it. I'm like, yeah, let's go with that because that's a badass dog.
That's
They are
true.
very badass. Yeah, I see
Yeah,
that. I don't know
I'm
if you
totally
have
cool
another
with that.
option. We're open for others though.
I mean, I could see that. That's actually very good because I never thought about it, and it makes sense. Your guesses make sense. But a Pomeranian was so funny.
I'm a Pom.
But it's cute. Yeah, I like Poms.
We're gonna have to put like an Instagram post of like our faces next to the dogs that we think we are, and just leave it
People
up and
can mix and
yeah.
match.
Yes. Okay, guess which one is which.
Or like a
I
bigger
love that.
version, a bigger version of a Pom, because I think Poms are so small for you. I don't know, like a Pomsky.
I mean, Olivia
Pomsky
sees me super
or
tiny.
that's true.
It could be. It could be. It could be.
It's
And the
just in my
Pomsky is
head. It's
nice.
just in my head. Yeah.
But I do not
Maybe a
see myself
Pomsky.
as any husky because I think like huskies and our vibes are, I don't know why. I don't have any husky clients now that I see. I promise it's not anything I'm forcing them out of Curious Nudes, but for some reason I feel huskies and I haven't vibed. Oh my goodness, I don't know what happened. I think someone came into my home. Oh yeah. Someone came into my home.
Someone.
So I think like this
I
is a
hope it's your
perfect time
husband.
to wrap it up. Oh yeah, my husband. We're good people. If not, my murder
I'm
would
like,
be recorded.
I know that'd be terrifying. Oh my god.
But
Please
if
send the
you were a
puppies.
Pom, you would be like, excuse me, you
Like,
wouldn't be this calm, I think. Yeah.
I was freaking out. Oh, wait, I mean, I think this is the perfect time to wrap up because the rehearsal is gonna start. So I feel like it was the perfect segue into all of these little journeys of your life. And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
Yeah, of course. Of course,
Oh.
anytime.
Before we let you go, do you want to let anybody know where they can follow you or if they want to book you if they happen to live in Tokyo and they're listening?
You never know. I
Yeah.
have my Instagram at Marina Hound. Very easy name. It's so funny because at the dog daycares, not dog daycares, dog parks, when I used to walk my dog clients, they would ask me for my Instagram and I'll be like, oh, do you want to like take notes? Do you want me to write down? They're like, no, Marina Hound. Like, that's good. I'll remember it. It's just so easy.
I'll remember it forever. It's a really good name. I really like it.
Marina Hound.
Totally. All right. Awesome.
right.
Well, if you guys want to follow Marina, go follow her at Marina Hound on Instagram. Book her if you're in Tokyo. She offers a lot for her doggies that she watches and wats. So yeah. Well, thank you so much, Marina. It's been so nice
Thank
chatting with
you.
you again and seeing you again. And thank you for taking some time out of your day. I think it's morning for you there, right?
Yeah. 11 a.m. here.
Okay.
So it's
Okay,
already
so-
the next day. So it's
She's in the
already
future.
Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday.
How is it?
How is it in the future,
Tell-
Marina?
For traveling, it's really nice because when I go back to Vancouver, I go back a day. So I arrive before the
time.
day I leave.
It's like it's so mind blowing
So
for me. I love the concept of time.
Well, Marina, we'll let you
Thank you,
go so you can
guys.
enjoy the rest of your day. But it was nice
Thank
chatting
you.
with you. And thank you for joining us on Roughly Speaking.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for inviting me. And I wish all the success for you guys and so much fun because I think all you do is fun.